So we've been talking this morning about looking forward. And to do that, we need to look back at what Senator Elizabeth Warren said at our convention 3 years ago. She said, America agrees with us on almost every issue of economic concern. Our values are America's values, and our agenda is America's agenda. Those words have never been truer than they are right now. I believe the outcome of this election is an indictment of politics as usual. The type of politics that Senator Warren has spent her career fighting against. And that's because she leads with her values. Senator Warren understands better than anyone that Washington must turn away from neoliberalism and trickle-down economics, trade agreements written by and for big corporations, economic policies drafted in Wall Street boardrooms, and the assumption that only those with money should have power. Now, that work starts today. Senator Warren is uniquely positioned to partner with us on a pro-worker agenda consistent with our shared values. She knows that we need trillions of dollars of investment to make America competitive in the 21st century and to ensure that workers are empowered to share the wealth that we help create. She understands that to truly make the investments that America needs, wealthy individuals and big corporations must start paying their fair share of taxes. And she is firmly committed to giving every worker a voice on the job and a say in our democracy. She has fought by our side by side with us for a new trade model that works for working people. She is the single most powerful voice for making Wall Street serve Main Street and a staunch ally of our Take on Wall Street campaign to protect consumers, to end tax speculation, and to confront corporate greed. Now, these are fights worth fighting. And on every single one of them, Senator Warren has stood on the right side of history. In these challenging times, there's no one, and I mean no one, that I would rather have standing with us than her. So it is my tremendous pleasure and my great honor to welcome to the AFL-CIO our sister, the senior senator from Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Rich, and thank you all for giving me this opportunity to talk with you. We are now 2 days removed from an incredibly close and hard-fought election. And many people here in Washington and all across the country are trying to make sense of what happened. You know, this wasn't a pretty election. In fact, it was ugly. And we should not sugarcoat why. Donald Trump ran a campaign that started with racial attacks, and then he rode the escalator down. He encouraged a toxic stew of hatred and fear. He attacked millions of Americans. He regularly made statements that undermined the core values of our democracy. And he won. He won, and now Latinos and Muslim American children are worried about what will happen to their families. LGBT couples are worried that their marriages could be dissolved by a Trump-Pence Supreme Court. Women are worried that access to desperately needed medical services will disappear. Millions of people in this country are worried, and they are right to be worried. Today, as president-elect, Donald Trump has an opportunity to chart a different course, to govern for all Americans and to respect our institutions. In his victory speech, he pledged that he would be president for all Americans. And when he takes the oath of office as leader of our democracy and leader of all Americans, I sincerely hope that he will fulfill that pledge with respect and concern for every single human being in this country, no matter who they are, no matter where they come from, no matter what they believe, no matter whom they love. And that marks Democrats' first job in this new era. We will stand up to bigotry. No compromises ever on this one. Bigotry in all its forms. We will fight back against attacks on Latinos, on African Americans, on women, on Muslims, on immigrants, on disabled Americans, on everyone. Whether Donald Trump sits in a glass tower or sits in the White House, we will not give an inch on this. Not now, not ever. But let's be clear on this point. There are many millions of people who voted for Donald Trump, not because of the bigotry and hate that fueled his campaign rallies. They voted for him despite the hate. They voted for him out of frustration and anger and out of hope that he would make real change in this country. If we have learned nothing else from the past 2 years of electioneering, we should hear that message loud and clear, that the American people want Washington to change. It was clear in the Democratic primaries. It was clear in the Republican primaries. It was clear in the campaign. And it was clear on Election Day. The final results may have divided us, but the entire electorate embraced deep, fundamental reform of our economic system and our political system. Working families across this country are deeply frustrated about an economy and a government that doesn't work for them. Exit polling on Tuesday found that 72% of voters believe, quote, the American economy is rigged to advantage the rich and the powerful. That's 72% of all voters, Democrats, Republicans, independents. The polls were also making clear that the economy was the top issue on voters' minds. Voters who are angry about a federal government that works for the rich and the powerful and leaves everyone else behind. Now, lobbyists in Washington and Washington insiders have spent years trying to convince themselves and each other that Americans don't actually believe this. And now that the returns are in and people have spoken, they are actually out there waving their hands trying to dismiss these views as some sort of mass delusion. Well, they are wrong. They are very wrong. The truth is that people have a right to be angry. Angry that wages have been stagnant for a generation while basic costs like housing and health care and child care have skyrocketed. Angry that our political system is awash in barely legalized campaign bribery. Angry that Washington eagerly protects the tax breaks for billionaires while it refuses to raise the minimum wage or help millions of Americans who are struggling with student loans, or enforce the law when millionaire CEOs who fund our political campaigns break the law. Angry that Washington pushes big corporate interests in trade deals, but won't make the investments in infrastructure to create good jobs right here in America. Angry that Washington tilts the playing field for giant corporations, giving them special privileges and letting them amass enormous economic and political power. angry that while Washington dithers and spins and does the backstroke in an ocean of money, while the American dream moves further and further out of reach for most families. Angry that working people are in debt. Angry that seniors can't stretch a Social Security check to cover the basics. President-elect Trump spoke to these issues. Republican elites hated him for it, and he didn't care. He did it anyway. He criticized Wall Street's big money and their dominance in Washington, straight up. He supported a new Glass-Steagall bill. He spoke against the need for reform of our trade deals so they aren't the raw deal for the American people. He said he would not cut Social Security benefits. He talked about the need to address the rising cost of college and about helping working parents with the high cost of child care. He spoke of the urgency of rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure and putting people back to work. He spoke to the very real sense that millions of Americans have that their government and their economy has abandoned them. And he promised to rebuild this economy for working people. The deep worry that people feel over an America that does not work for them is not a liberal worry or a conservative worry. It is not a Democratic worry or a Republican worry. It is the deep worry that led even Americans with deep reservations about Donald Trump's temperament and fitness to vote for him anyway. So let me be 100% clear about this. When President-elect Trump wants to take on these issues, when his goal is to increase the economic security of middle-class families, then count me in. I will push aside our differences and I will work with him to achieve that goal. I offer to work as hard as I can and to pull in as many people as I can into this effort. If Trump is ready to go on rebuilding American economic security for millions of families, then I am ready, and so are a lot of other people, Democrats and Republicans. But let me also be clear about what rebuilding our economy does not mean. It does not mean handing the keys to our economy over to Wall Street so they can run it for themselves. Americans want to hold the big banks accountable, and that will not happen if we gut Dodd-Frank and we fire the cops responsible for watching over those banks, like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. If Trump and the Republican Party try to turn loose the big banks and financial institutions so they can once again gamble with our economy and bring it all crashing down, then we will fight them every step of the way. Every step. And rebuilding our economy does not mean crippling our economy and ripping working families apart by rounding up and deporting millions of our coworkers, our friends and our neighbors, our mothers and our fathers, our sons and our daughters. If Republicans choose that path, we will fight them every step of the way. And health care. Americans want to reform Obamacare, Democrats included. We must bring down the cost of health insurance and the cost of health care overall. But if the Republicans want to strip away health insurance from 20 million Americans, if they want to let cancer survivors get kicked to the curb, if they want to throw 24-year-olds off their parents' health insurance, then we will fight them every step of the way. Americans want to close tax loopholes that benefit the very rich. And Donald Trump claimed to support closing the carried interest loophole and other loopholes. We need a fairer tax system. But if Republicans want to force through massive tax breaks that blow a hole in our deficit and tilt the playing field even further toward the wealthy and big corporations, then we will fight them every step of the way. The American people, Democrats and Republicans and independents, have been clear about what economic policies they want Washington to pursue. 2/3 of people in this country support raising the federal minimum wage. 3/4 of Americans want the federal government to increase its infrastructure investments. Over 70% of Americans believe students should have a chance at debt-free college. Nearly 3/4 support expanding Social Security. These are the kinds of policies that will help level the playing field for working families and address the frustrations felt by millions of people across this country. This is an American agenda. Now, the American people sent one other message as well. Economic reform requires political reform. Why has the government worked so long for only those at the top? And the answer is money. Money. And the American people want this system changed. The American people are sick of politicians wallowing in campaign contributions and dark money. They are revolted by influence peddling by wealthy people and giant corporations. Keep in mind, when Bernie Sanders proved his independence by running a campaign based on small dollar contributions, and when Donald Trump promised to spend his own money, both were sending an important message that they could not be bought. And once again, if Donald Trump is ready to make good on his promise to get corruption out of politics, to end dark money and pay to play, then count me in. I will work as hard as I can. I will pull as many people as I can into the fight to end the influence of big money and return democracy to the American people. That's what I believe. You know, Donald Trump won the presidency under a Republican flag. But Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, and the Republicans in Congress and their way of doing business were rejected. Rejected by their own primary voters, rejected during the campaign, and rejected in Tuesday's election. Regardless of political party, working families are disgusted by a Washington that works for the rich and powerful and leaves everyone else behind. The American people have called out loudly for economic and political reform. For years, too many Republicans and too many Democrats have refused to hear their demands. The majority of Americans voted against Donald Trump. Democrats picked up seats in both the House and the Senate. And yet, here we are. Republicans are in control of both houses of Congress and the White House. And that makes our job clear. As the loyal opposition, we will fight harder, we will fight longer, and we will fight more passionately than ever for the rights of every human being in this country to be treated with respect and dignity. We will fight for economic opportunity, not just for some of our kids, but for all of our kids. And we do not control the tools of government, but make no mistake, We know what we stand for. The sun will keep rising, and we will keep fighting. Each day, every day, we will fight for the working people of this country. That's what we will do. The time for ignoring the American people is over. It is time for us to come together to work on America's agenda. Democracy demands that we do so, and we are ready. Thank you all.
Thank you.